issues and feeling nauseous. And so I think that's what kind of. I honestly, I barely got any of the dog story. I think I got some bit of related to it seemed like dementia, where they're talking about like putting post-it notes on things to describe what things were. Yeah. But then after that point, I kind of, my brain just went everywhere.
No, I understand. And it was also like I think it was the first dream. So of course everything happens for the first time, and then you're already busy with what is happening rather than what are they telling. So I think that is an aspect, and I agree that of course, because we in NEOS we have these cultural or cultural codes already. When you wear a flat avatar, it's about performance issues and stuff. For them, it was just a quick fix. To quickly have images, because they couldn't find a 3D seagull. They couldn't find like a 3D avatar dog. So for them, it was just a representation of an idea. But now that you're saying this, of course, there's now already a culture within NEOS that also has its own meaning. So I understand that your associations go in a completely different direction for that reason, which is actually interesting to think about. But for them, it was mostly a stand-in idea. And talking about that dog, I try to sort of encourage you to go into the scene, because as it was said, but you also feel that you might not be allowed. And when I was floating in as a dog, and I suddenly saw the mocap person respond to me, and we did a little dance, and I was sitting next to the feeding thing of the dog and stuff. For me, actually, I actually got very touched, because the guy who was in VR later, when they made the choice, they chose the chair, and he said yes because I danced with my dog. So there was something there.
That was my favorite moment as well. Yeah, like looking at it.
Yeah. That made me wonder if.
Sorry,
if you were in the middle of talking, I interrupted you.
Well, I think that we found something there that we can elaborate on even more. So we're not just background filling stand-ins for a dream, but you can have actually, with the right codes, there's something to this not speaking, but this mime aspect that can become quite private and interesting. So I think that there's a little track there that we can explore a bit further in that sense. But I really enjoyed when everybody was like the weird dragons. And then if you would move into the attic and you look through the window, you see those floating dragons. And then exactly the voiceover says that the clouds turned into dragons. And I'm like, oh yeah, it works. Yeah. That was really lovely. And also knowing it is you, that's another thing. I mean, it's so great to know that, it's a social thing as well. We're doing it together, So, sorry, but yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to add also regarding this attention thing. I mean, also it's something you said kind of before as well. Like, I also had this sort of difficulty sort of paying attention to the story, because I was also thinking like, oh, how should I sort of act and sort of be part of like what's my role? I was also thinking about that, and so there's sort of attention being pulled in those two ways as well. Yeah. So I agree. It's like a hard balance, and it depends on the person, I guess. And
no, but this is a very good point, Kyle Fix, and this is the precision of the instructions that you give. So we definitely wanted it to be voluntary. So if you felt you just wanted to float in the background and just remain a spectator, that's perfectly fine. So we don't want to have like a singular, if this happens, you have to do that, but rather you have options. If you want to engage, you can move in, you can change your appearance and connect to the story. If you want to stay in the background, you're most happy to just also stay that ghostly fly on the wall, so to speak. So we're looking for multiple perspectives in that sense. Yeah.
I think I joined late, but it was I actually had the opposite assumption that we were supposed to stay out of the scene. Yeah. And so I was like I was intentionally floating back, and then I remember when the person came in, I think it was you were dancing with a dog. I was like, oh gosh, the person's ruining their performance. Oh shit! Oh no,
that was me.
Sorry. Oh no, it makes sense in context knowing that. It was that I had joined late and missed that piece of instruction.
Yes.
And that changed it from like in my mind now it's the goal was to interact with them and be like and to improve the experience, not just be a spectator. Because I had the default assumption that I was supposed to be a spectator.
You have freedom, right?
Yeah, exactly. Both was fine. I understand that you didn't know that you had that option, so that is an important one. Yeah. I was also curious because we used to have a more profound space, like really walls that you couldn't enter. And now all we had was the white line, both in the physical space and in the virtual space. All it was just a white line as some sort of membrane. Did you feel that also was literally almost like a threshold, like you cannot pass that area, so to speak, or you cannot
actually enter? I was in physical fly mode for the first two, and then you couldn't actually enter at all, I think.
That's true.
So there was a collider,
yeah.
I was wondering, how do people get in? And then I realized, right?
I assumed it was a tracking thing, so it was just marking the tracking. But I also did kind of have that. I think I ran into that wall once, and then that reinforced in my mind, like, we're not supposed to go in there.
Right, that's good to know.
That's the no space. Like, maybe even if it's, I guess for my mind, as soon as I popped into the world and there was voiceover, I completely forgot the instructions that Joris D had given me of follow them, and so I was immediately granted, I think we had an issue with someone joining as well, so my brain was immediately like, oh, I need to let them know that that's an issue, and I just ended up not doing that. But then I had forgotten everything else that was said immediately.
Interesting.
So maybe this happened with Tutorial World as well. We're putting a user in some space where they can get grounded, and then take a moment to recap, and then enter something that's more visually stimulating.
Yeah.
That was useful for getting new people into Neos. Maybe that would be useful for making sure people like me remember
I completely hear what you're saying. And I think we had that world because we start elsewhere in the world. They were first up there. It was actually meant for that reason. But then we realized that the audio of the physical space was already running. So it became very hard for Joris Dingelstad to give all these informations while you also have the, the audio from the real space already. So that's why we decided to do it here. But when you do it here, it's of course what you hear here, and then you enter another world. It's also, this is how memory works, right? You compartmentalize memory in spaces. So if you enter a new world, you might forget a lot of things. So there's something there that is interesting indeed to recap on a little bit.
I think for me, the amount of immediate visual movement that was going on, where it was going from here, which is very realistic colored and very static, like nothing's really moving, to a lot of purple and pink and objects are in there and everything's moving and it's like a cyclone of colors, and I'm just like, holy shit.
It was a mind eraser space. Yeah.
That was intense. Good but point. It felt like the dream too. Like I went in there and I'm like, oh, I'm in some kind of entirely new world. Everything's just chaos around, and this might be some kind of fragment of something too.
Right.
As soon as it was like, oh, we're collecting dreams, I'm like, ooh, this makes sense to me. And I'm looking at all these objects, I'm like, I wonder what that is. And then there's a game called Dear Esther that had a slightly similar premise. And it was that same sort of like, oh, I wonder what these different things mean. And then we went down. It felt disconnected to me slightly, but it in terms of the kind of staging area and the live area. But it definitely...
There's a lot of ideas there, but they didn't yet manage to really make it fit. But thank God they still have a few more weeks, including Christmas. No, I'm teasing.
Did they work on this one, Joris?
Please let us rest at least a week.
Sorry, what was your...
How much time did they spend on this one?
This was a 3-week arc.
Wow.
I think they introduced this idea 3 weeks ago to me, and that was just like, we have this idea kind of phase all the way to what we have now. Yeah.
Wow.
Dang. Holy crap.
That's a big accomplishment.
Really impressive.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think it's also a testament to what Neos can do. So I think the fact that they are so comfortable in Neos. I mean, most of the meetings we had was in Neos, as Myrna knows. And I mean, the quickness in which we have been prototyping and sketching, especially you guys. I mean, every week I was in different sketches and worlds. It's really, really amazing. I'm so happy with, I knew that was possible, but to actually experience it is just amazing. I forgot to teach. I mean, I was just, every week I had another like surreal experience with my students. I'm like, great, yeah, bring it on, Yeah. Hey, sorry, you were about to make an announcement.
I want to ask how many of the people that are here right now would do another round, because we are starting in about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good to
That'd be
know.
interesting.
Yeah, Myrna, you will go?
Yeah, I'll be recording another session so we can have more footage for you all.
Yeah, that's
I'll
fantastic.
try to actually listen